SoundCloud. All right. So I am super excited to be here with Ashley Timmerman from Jefferson County Human Services or Social Services. We had just discussed that actually, and now I'm already throwing out something completely different. But yeah, we got to be able to connect over a long period of time at the conference that we just got to do together. And it was, it was really incredible to be able to hear some of the things you were saying about the programs and some of the groups you've been running. And I really wanted to be able to get you on here and kind of get to hear your take and kind of hear where you've been and what's kind of transpired. So if you want to introduce yourself and your title, your position, and how long you've been working in the field and how many years you've been helping to serve the families and youth and everybody that you're trying to help.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ashley, and I'm one of the intake workers here at Jefferson County Human Services. I've been here over 12 years.
Yeah.
The majority of my time was spent doing initial assessment, doing CPS investigations. I also had my stint in like after hours doing emergency mental health. A little bit about my background is I did primarily have a clinical focus. And so in going through my master's, I did alcohol and drug treatment for youth. I worked in an alcohol and drug treatment residential facility. And back in the day when it was called juvenile probation, which it is not anymore, I interned in that as well. So youth, teenagers have always had just kind of a special place in my heart. I enjoy working with them. And I had the opportunity a couple years ago to kind of get into a hybrid role. So I do a little bit of everything. I do youth justice referrals, as well as doing the CPS side of things. I focus primarily on truancy and preventions, but I can also do collaborative stuff. Let's say they do have a CPS case and a youth justice. So then they only have one worker. And so I've been doing that now for about 3 years. And I really enjoy it. And I get to serve the youth and families in Jefferson County.
Yeah, wow. For more than a decade now. So you've really stepped your way up and you've kind of created, as you said, per se, your own role.
Sorry.
And your own you gotta love the motion sensor lights. Yes.
Yeah, those are new.
Yeah. So you've really, after a decade or so, 12 years, you've seen it all, been through it all. Probably worked with almost just about every family situation possible. Which yeah, there's, like we always say, there's never a shortage of issues or slew of things that continue to keep coming up, or problems that are happening. So over all those years, you're very versatile in what you've done, and it sounds as though you've helped out a lot of different families in a lot of different roles. So how many different programs, or how many, you have to probably continually get trainings and certifications and just have to continually keep your education going to keep up with all that, I would imagine.
Yeah, and one of the great things that I've gotten to do for many, many years, I took a year off this year, is the 4E interns from University of Madison. And so typically they were there last year. So it's the child welfare program. And so essentially the master program, you have to do your internships in CPS, whether it be intake, ongoing. I think you might be able to do like access, and then they do pay for, I think, all of your masters, but then with the condition that you have to work in public child welfare for the time that you were in school. And so it's really getting people to be exposed to the child welfare system. And so I've been able to do that quite a bit and keep my trainings and everything up through that. But yeah, it's an ever evolving field. And I feel like you learn something new every day, and definitely has changed over the past 12 plus years.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the newer, bigger issues that you've kind of been addressing, or that have become more prevalent or more common over these last few years as you're
Social media. Social media did not exist when I started in this field. We didn't have cell phones, definitely didn't have smartphones. I think after the pandemic, a lot of Zooms or Teams or just virtual options is something that has been very, very new. And so I think in general, just our youth growing up very, very fast and encountering things that us as adults are still trying to navigate, and their little brains and their little self-esteems are struggling with it. And so it's younger kids dealing with adult stuff.
And it is traumatic. It's traumatizing. As you said, they're growing up so quick, so fast with such a plethora of information tossed at them to such a degree as to where it's how do you even process, manage, or deal with this? And that does really impact a youth's just view on how they even see themselves. And how do you even navigate this world when you have influencer and TikToker and all these people telling you, just blasting you with so many messages? And it's no wonder we are in a society with higher rates of anxiety and depression. And, everybody always says, for as connected as we are, we still feel completely removed and more alone than really at any other time prior to. And I feel like it's always those conversations of when you feel lost, alone, and scared, or when you feel like you don't have a purpose or a place, is when you start really seeing the most destructive, negative behaviors start to emerge, or these behaviors that you would have never thought to have to deal with, or that weren't prevalent way back when you originally started.
Yeah, I will tell youth, I said, you couldn't pay me to be a teenager these days. They have to deal with a lot. And again, it's stuff that us as adults are always struggling with. And so being able to help navigate that through even just one youth, I just think has been amazing.
it, it is huge. And when you're able to liberate or get one kid to be able to see it for what it is, and they can impact their group or that little section that they're in, I mean, because it does take a lot. It takes a lot of messaging, a lot of content, and a lot of different things as to where you do need a team. You need a community, and you need consistent messaging, and you need to try to be able to reach them at a level as to where they're at.
Yeah, and a lot of times when I'm talking to like parents or schools or wherever I'm kind of in front of, I'll say like, I'm not here to move mountains, but I'm here to maybe make one person think a little bit differently
Mm.
about the topic. And I feel like I have, at least I've been told by some of the youth that like, yeah, like I have thought differently about it. I'm not here to shame you. I'm not here to tell you do this, do that. I'm here to have conversations and maybe make you think about it differently.
That's perfect.
Hmm.
I mean, that's where the true transformation and the true change comes. The only way you're going to see the change is by first thinking about it differently, or even being able to see that there needs to be a change. Because so many teens we work with will just look at you and be like, what's
Yeah.
the problem? What's what do you know? Like, you're trying to come into my teen life where you just told me you didn't have social media back when. So what are you supposed
Hmm.
to tell me about this?
Yeah.
And do you feel like it does get harder and harder to be able to connect, even if you are approaching it with a non-threatening, I'm here to just have a discussion?
Hmm. Yeah, I think so. I think usually when I work with the youth, one of the first things is I say is I care, but I don't care. Like why we're here. The majority of my youth have been referred for some sort of crime within the sexual realm. And then it goes through me through like a diversion process. And so, yes, do I know what they were alleged to have done? Yes. But I don't say that to the youth. And I just say, it's up to you. Like, you can tell me, you don't have to tell me. Like, I just want to get to know you a little bit. And I think even just starting off like that, so it's not so like criminalized and it's not very much, I'm going to tell you this, that, and the other so that you don't commit that crime again. We don't even talk about anything like that for weeks. I said, I just want to have a conversation and again, try to maybe make you think of things differently.
That's huge. I always, when you said that, I'm just here to talk. We're
Mhm.
not coming at you with a threatening, you're a demon, you're a terribly awful child. Like, look at what you've done, shaking the finger. And because we are all, we're all our own worst critics to such a degree as to where, like, we often have that guilt ourselves. We know when we mess up, or we know when things aren't okay. We don't need everybody shoving their finger in our face, being like, you're a terrible person. And for
Mhm.
you to give them that outlet and to be able to give them an opportunity to just speak and be heard, because a lot of times kids in those moments don't get to be heard because they're just silenced, told they're bad, or everything you're doing is just wrong. And now you need to change. And now you now just fix it. Just change it, right?
Yeah, and the majority of the youth eventually do end up sharing, what had happened, but I don't start it off by, you need to tell me what you did, so then I can tell you why you shouldn't do that in the future. It eventually just comes out in a very natural conversation, and they tell me, and I go, okay, and then we just move on.
And to not have that hanging over their heads, or to be able to even just feel free enough to trust and open up about that, is
Yeah.
speaks volumes to you being able to connect and relate with the youth to a whole new level, which takes a lot of years of practice, skill, and
Yes.
just like it says a lot about you as an individual as well.
Hmm.
And that's where it's been incredibly amazing getting to be able to know you over these last, we were just talking, since 2021, when we first started introducing, and you came on board to be able to be trained in on some of our curriculums and programs. um, and one in particular, as you were seeing a lot of the social media areas, um, you had a lot of cases, or you had brought up the areas or issues of sexting as well, and just how prevalent or how consistently those numbers have been going up. um, and so yeah, so when it comes to dealing with all things, not only social media, but then all the other areas or issues that the kids are getting into, such as sexting, which is something that more often than not, um, a lot of times just having that healthy conversation, or having a tool or something put into place to give these kids the freedom and flexibility to talk about some of this stuff. Because I always tell parents, like, if we're not talking about these issues with the youth, there's no way in the world they're going to come and talk to us about it.
Hmm.
And there's
Yeah.
no way in the world we're ever going to be able to help anything if we don't even know how to have these conversations.
Hmm.
So I guess I
Yeah.
just want to ask you about your experience being trained in on the social media sexting program,
Hmm.
what you thought about the trainings, the messaging and content behind it, and just how that is different from a lot of other programs or things that you've seen. And does it match up with like the approach that you're still taking? Has it aligned with kind of what you said with non-threatening, non-violence? Or I just kind of want to hear from you as to your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think a couple different things really stick to me. One is the tailored made thing that you say in a lot of your initial trainings is, yes, there is the set curriculum, and there's these set weeks and these set activities, but you take, what you want when you want. And sometimes I have a half hour with a youth, sometimes I have an hour and a half. And so just to be able to pick and choose is amazing. Some other things are very much so not that way. And it's a checklist, and you have to do it within a certain amount of time. And so that's one thing that I definitely appreciate. Um, just all of the like examples and printouts that we get from the trainings, there are many times where like youth will take those home, and they'll be able to have something tangible. Or if they don't want, and I'll always give that youth the option, do you want to write, do you want me to write, or do you just want to talk? And I've had all three. I literally did a curriculum for 5 6 weeks while the youth was fishing, and I sat in a chair, and we literally talked, and I would write some stuff down, and then he would take it, and go with it. I had a youth that one of the activities is kind of, we didn't set anything on fire, but like burning these bad things that people have said about you. And then also coming up with very positive things, almost like affirmations. And she told me after we did that she actually brought out like her markers and different things to like write these words in fun colors, and she put it on her mirror. So like having that stuff too, just like that tangible stuff for youth to remember if they want to, um, has been just amazing. Just the plethora of stuff that we're able to get, not only through the booklets, but also then the online stuff. Having those YouTube videos, having those examples, because sometimes the pictures aren't the greatest in the books, and we can talk about things better when it's on a computer. And kids, they use a lot of computers. And so for them, that is more so their level than it is me busting out a book. for them too. So just the wide variety, flexibility. And I've had so many youth say, this is the stuff no one talks about. In particular, the real life scenarios. This is the stuff no one talks about, but we need to know. And so I think that too, all encompassed, I really enjoy the curriculum, everything that comes with it.
The materials, the resources, the flexibility, the way it's kind of laid out has been hugely beneficial and helpful. So, and it sounds like you're getting really great discussions, and it sounds like the kids are relating really, really well with some of the content. Have you noticed things laid out as to where they are starting to open up vastly faster, or like you're gaining that trust a lot quicker through the activities or the messages? Or what would you say have been some of the really important messaging that has been coming through this, or the discussions that have been having that have been able to build? Have you noticed that trust be built right away as to where, because like we said, we were talking earlier about how hard it is to really captivate a child's attention or keep them engaged to the degree as to where, unless you're juggling fireballs or riding a unicycle, kids are like, meh, seen that, done that.
And we do them one-on-one, and I think that has also helped a lot. And a lot of youth will share with me in feedback, like, I would have never like said the things I said, like if I was in a group of peers. And that's, again, too, like, it's tailor made, like you can do what you want with kind of what it is. And I think starting off the gate with the girls to women, boys to men, that probably throws them off a little bit, like, whoa, you're not here to tell me I should not send nudes, or you're not here. And, we're starting this conversation with like that. And I think it gets them talking about something that isn't necessarily sexual in nature, that isn't so like probably why they initially think that they're meeting with me. And we talk about anything from like careers to cars, and really just like starting that dialogue. I use a lot of humor with youth. And that really just gets them to kind of like open up out the gate when it's not something punitive. It's not something very sexual right away. I think really gets the conversation and kind of the trust they're going. And again, always reiterating, like, I'm not here to judge. I've heard it all, so nothing you're going to say is going to shock me. And you use your own words. And again, you can write, you cannot write, I can write, or we can talk.
I love that. You're providing just so many different outlets, and you're making it as just youth oriented and youth focused as possible without having to just continually be like, nope, just boom, boom, boom. Like, this is it. This, like you said, with some of those other ones, just linear, this is how it's set up, do it this way, or it doesn't count.
Yeah, no, it definitely leaves a lot of room, a lot of wiggle room. But that wiggle room is sometimes where you create the most conversation and the most opportunity for change, I feel like.
And speaking of change, I mean, you gave some prime examples of the girl taking out the markers and, writing out all the positives and putting it on that mirror, because that's such a huge thing as to what I always say. It's so much easier to see 10 negatives versus 5 positives. And when we look in that mirror, and when you give them something to focus on more than just this, that within itself is huge. So have you noticed a lot of kids connecting with it as to where you've effectively seen a lot of that change, or you've seen them kind of thinking through things differently, or you've when you were done with the group, you could have left and been like, I know that kid got it. Like, it was an immediate moment of like, okay, the kid's wheels returning, like something stuck. And you felt like there was enough positive change or results that you've seen kind of come from that? Or can you speak to any of the changes or immediate things that you did notice from start to finish?
Sure. Yeah. One of the things, so in the second week is like music, movies, TV, things like that. I'll have, youth are shocked sometimes, because I'll play the songs and I'll kind of go along with them. And you can see they get a little red sometimes, or a little uncomfortable, because they're like, I didn't know that's what that said. And then I can't tell you how many youth the next week go, hey, you got to add this song, or hey, you got to add this one. And it's not only, yeah, I've had two individuals who have brought me music from Mexico. And so I've kind of like put that
Oh,
along in, because yeah, it is not just, in a silo, like it affects everywhere. And when you really start listening to that, so that one's been pretty cool because it's kind of, and I challenge them through the week. Hey, if you hear a song, if you see something on TV, or everything is Netflix now or streaming, like just pay a little bit more attention to it, and I will see them bring it back the next week. So that one's pretty cool. I really enjoy coming back the next week and seeing that. um Sometimes it's
that
even
one.
kind of like smaller changes with even like vocabulary or what they're saying or what they're using. And granted, it is only 5 to 6 weeks, again, give or take, depending on their schedules and stuff. But even just like their confidence about like maybe what they're going to do in the future, or what they're going to maybe say if someone else talks about it, or learning that no, not everyone is doing this, or yes, there are collateral consequences if you do choose to continue to do about this. And again, it's not just don't do this or do this, it's why, and why we do the things that we do. And again, thinking about it differently makes them think. I've seen that at least in a few youth that I've worked with. That was pretty cool.
Awesome to hear. And week two for the listeners is hypersexualization in today's world. So when they're listening to those songs, you're encouraging them to really listen to those sexualized messages. And I always remember going in or starting a few of the groups where I'm just singing these songs, and kids are like, "What do you sing? Like, how do you sing that?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're offended by me singing it, but when it's on the radio all around you, you're all like, yeah, best song ever." And I'm like,
Yeah.
just like you said, being cognizant of how much of it we really are stem steeped and submerged in
Mhm.
all of these areas that we don't even realize half the times as to how much it does impact, influence, or how we see one another, how we treat one another,
Mhm.
conversations we're having.
Mhm.
A lot of it is that influence, so that the social media influence and the messaging that we're getting from everything. It is literally built into everything. So getting the kids to be able to see it for what it is, like you said, and coming to you with the new songs and being like, oh, it's everywhere. It's
Yeah,
like,
they like those hidden messages. I even had one youth, he was the eldest of a bunch of siblings, talk about like a Disney movie or a Pixar movie, and how like he just kind of looked at it a little bit differently when his younger sibling was watching it. It's like, yeah,
mm,
it's everywhere. I think we're just so used to it that without someone pointing it out, which you do in these activities, you don't think it's just so normal to them.
yeah. And that's where I always say, when it comes to teens being caught for social media sexting, 3/4 of them will look at you and be like, so what? Like, it has become so normalized as to where not only A, do they even see anything wrong with it, but B, that mentality and that deviant mentality and mindset, where that leads, what further that ends up with. um and it is scary, and like you said earlier, getting to the why and pointing out the why these things are happening the way they do, and really laying that roadmap for them to be able to just walk down this path like, oh my gosh, this is why it's not okay, this is why it's not normal, this is where this has really been stemmed from
Mm.
from all this other stuff. It doesn't just come out of nowhere, and it doesn't just get to be normalized out of nowhere.
I think it's just such a taboo topic that it
Mm,
makes a lot of people uncomfortable, whether it's parents, whether it's school personnel, whatever it is, people just, they don't like to talk about it, and
it
it
does.
needs to be talked about.
And like, yeah, as we said, if we're not the ones discussing it, or if we're not even opening the door to have those conversations, well, then
Yeah.
how in the world are we going to expect these kids to come to us and be able to open up about it? And just like I always say, every time we say the words just sexting, sex, or any other taboo topic, it immediately makes people be like, oh, or how would you expect us to talk about that? And it's like, well, that's what these activities are designed to do, is to talk about the hardest topics and some of the most taboo issues, and presenting it in a way as to where it's not so terrifying. It gets to the roots of the whys, and it builds from, like you said, the boxes, the men and women in today's society, and how it builds off of those to where it does make the engagement that much different. It's not just coming out being like sexting's bad, like, or just like today
Yeah.
we're talking about sexting. Like you
Mhm.
said, it doesn't start with that sexualized message right off
No.
the bat.
Yeah, and I don't even, yeah, it rarely is very deliberate in point like that. It's very much just a natural flowing conversation. And it's even nice to, you may have a 17-year-old, you may have a younger youth, and to be able to, I'm not gonna treat someone who's that, 17 the same as I would like a 12-year-old, and be able to talk about those things. And also it's not just, one gender, it's both. And sometimes I've had, one gender say like, well, no one ever talks about this. All the pressures that, let's first say, like, boys have. They got a lot of stuff. Yes, I think girls are sometimes highlighted, but boys struggle too. And just, they don't have to man up or tough up. They struggle too, just as much as girls do.
That's it.
Yeah.
No, it's not. And so, like we said, social media, you're in the messaging 10 times the amount that you normally would, or 100 times the amount than you normally would, as to, just self-image and whatever else.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
how long, so like, as we said, you've been trained since 2021, or you've been going through the trainings. So you've
Mhm.
got to run several different groups, and you've got to work with a plethora of different youth and kids, and you've got to see a lot of these positive results. Um, what did the implementation process kind of look like for your county or for your area? Was it kind of, did you already have something in place, or was it a difficult transition or program to be able to say, did you just show up and say, hey, we have a new social media sexting program now, we're going to do this, and everybody was like, cool? Or what did that?
Yeah, no, I think so myself and another coworker, we are pretty entrenched in the schools. And so we typically had like monthly meetings where we would talk about some at-risk youth, also, some options for like the child welfare families too and support. And we let them know, because it is in the schools. Like, that is one of the things, and people are seeing it in the schools, the school personnel are, and the school resource officers are. Um, and it can open a can of worms, because one can send one picture, and then, and so you could have one youth or you could have 20. And so really trying to see like, well, then what do you do with this stuff? Because again, it's rarely just one, because it's
It's true.
continued
It's
on and on and on. And
yeah,
sometimes you don't even know who half those individuals are. And so it really started with having those conversations with schools, because they were starting to see that. And along with that came other issues too, bullying. People were then getting dinged with like disorderly conduct, but what did it stem from? These kind of these kind of things. And so it was just kind of introducing it. We allowed them, if they wanted, to look at the curriculum, to be able to kind of see for themselves. And then really it just kind of took one person to take a chance and say, hey, I think she might be a victim, but she also might be kind of contributing, and we don't quite know where it is. And we don't want to send like a felony charge, because again, a lot of those things do fall in that felony thing. And like,
yeah.
dad's open to services, kid is kind of on the fence, but like, do you want to take a stab at it? And that's really what it was, is it took one person to say, hey, are you willing to give this a try? And they
Yeah.
did. And then it shortly started having a lot of conversations through formal referrals. What do we do with these? Because a lot of times when we use the Yazzie pre-screen, which is not necessarily a validated thing for sexual offenses, but you more than likely are going to have like low risk to reoffend. And so they were kind of coming through as almost like a diversion route. And so my coworker would maybe meet with them, do the intake with them, and then say, okay, but I want you to do this curriculum with Ashley. And then I would obviously set that up. And so they would also come through that. And then little by little, school resource officers, different personnel within the school just kind of became familiar with me and my coworker kind of doing these. And we got some informal ones too, like, this individual is really struggling. We're kind of worried about maybe what's on our social media. Parents were willing to, have us work with the youth. And so it really just kind of spanned through there, and it's kind of like a word of mouth now, like that we do this and we can come into the schools, we can go to the home, youth can come to us. Like we are completely flexible with whatever the youth and family want it to look like.
When you're meeting them at their own,
Mhm.
yeah, you're reaching that level. So now anybody can just kind of email you, or anybody can just say, hey, we got another kid. You want
Mhm.
to, and like you said, I feel like that was a big issue too, as to where I seen a lot of people were like, well, is this person referral worthy? Is this person at that level? And I always say, if you're questioning it at that moment, I mean, and how many kids did you have throughout your groups? I think you had referenced it before that said every child should have like this messaging, or like every child should hear what we're talking about, because it doesn't just impact those that are actually doing it. I mean, or those that are the ones that actually end up getting caught, because that messaging, like we said, is out there everywhere.
Yeah, one of the first youth that I had in high school, he was the one who actually was like, this is stuff that should be taught in schools. Like we don't learn about this stuff. And I can't remember if he was a freshman or a sophomore, but he was younger in high school. And I've seen him since then, and he will say like, yeah, like this is the stuff, like people need to talk about this stuff in school. I had a youth even over the summer who, was asking questions, and he was an older in high school, and like was just like almost flabbergasted, like, oh really? That's a crime? Like, but everyone's doing it. Like, how come no one's telling us about this? Like, why didn't anyone? And and honestly, I really think that he didn't know. And where do people get a lot of their information from? Schools, parents, things like that. So if you're not talking about it, they're not getting the information. And so yeah, I've had quite a few youth say again, this is stuff no one's talking about. This is stuff that should be at least tried to talk about in schools or somewhere, because it is such a huge topic.
And they've seen, so even after going through the group, it was intriguing enough for that child to still come back up to you and be like, hey, and give you that reminder, or be able to
Mhm.
say that. So that
Yeah,
speaks volumes too, to the connection that you made and had, and the impression that has lasted with this kid.
yeah, and the school even gave some feedback that after I had worked with that youth for those several weeks, they've had, I mean, because it improved other things too. Um, we've had no more referrals. I don't even think they've had to like make phone calls home, because again, it wasn't just like that one thing, because it talks about so many other aspects in your life. I had a female who was in the younger grades also reflect back a lot, and she did a narrative through an English class or a writing class on kind of just the self-reflection and that she was able to do as to why this is an issue, and again why no one talks about it. And it
That
was kind of a blessing in disguise of, she had to work with me, but she walked away with it, obviously learning something enough to write some kind of narrative
I was
in
gonna
the
say, to
English
right.
class. So it was cool.
I'm blown away. Those two stories alone, to
Mm.
hear that coming from the activities, the groups, the messaging, the content, enough so as to where you had a school literally say, we've not had any referrals back,
Mhm.
or like we've had to
Yep.
deal with this kid since that group.
Mhm.
That
'Cause it
that
makes you think differently. It's not just, again, don't do this, don't do this. It's not all sexual. It makes you just think differently. And that's what at least I always try to say about the curriculums. And again, I'm not here to move mountains, just like change
yeah,
one person's, but I think like maybe he had some conversations with his buddies.
yeah.
Well, because
Well, if
we're
he's
not
thinking
seeing a
about it
lot of stuff.
differently, he's got to be passing that along, or at least sharing that. I love
Mhm.
that you brought up like having the discussion in the mountains, because that's
Yeah.
one of the pictures that I always show at the very beginning of a lot of the trainings we do, is the, you know, getting people to be able to see the full picture for what it really is.
Mhm.
Mountain that has the mother and the child, and then when you flip it over, or it's just the mountain setting, and then you flip it over and you see the mother child. And it's
Yeah.
really about how do we have those healthy enough conversations to point things out in a way that gets you to see the full picture for what it is.
Yeah.
and and hearing that that message is being received to that degree and is working, I love it. And just being able to have this opportunity to be able to connect with you, to hear everything you're doing, to hear the groups you've been able to run, the connections you've been able to make, and then hearing successes like that is, it's a proud moment. It's those moments where you just kind
Yeah.
of, yeah,
Hmm. No,
where
I
it's
really enjoyed it. I think, doing it for give or take just shy of 2 years. Sorry again.
that's all right.
Um, it's probably one of my, and even like taking some of the activities, like if it's not like you can use these things in so many other aspects of life. And those activities just again aren't just all sexual stuff and just how youth are really intelligent. And if you just give them the opportunity to sit down and chat with them, you will learn so much. And yes, are there always going to be those individuals that are going to not engage or one word answers or maybe super engaging but still continue on behaviors? Yep. But you know what? Maybe they'll at least think of it a little bit differently. The next time they're in some kind of situations, and the school and the community know that we have this resource um,
Well,
for.
with success like that, like you said, it's been a lot of people have now just been like, hey, like this
Yep.
is cool. Like, you want some more? You want another kid?
Hmm. Yeah.
I feel like to wrap up on such a high note is an amazing aspect. But before we do fully wrap up, I'd love to end on a high note. But I want to just kind of hear your final takeaways, from just all your years of experience. What is something that you could pass down to other agencies, community, anybody, health and human services that's listening to this, or that's interested in learning more about the sexting programs, or learning more about what you're doing, or what could be your final wrap up moment or your final takeaways as far as what you've learned over all your years of experience, and just working with families and youth? And then, yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's ever changing. I feel like I learn something new every day. Sometimes, taking the opportunities for youth to teach me about, I don't know, an acronym or a new something that I don't even know exists out there. So never stop learning, never stop being just open. Everything starts just with a conversation. And I feel like, again, the non-threatening, the non, and I'm not law enforcement. I can't get you in trouble. Like I'm just here just
that,
to simply talk. And I think a lot of people, again, through just where we are today, there's stuff behind that cell phone, there's stuff behind that computer. Put that stuff down, talk face to face, break down some of those barriers and be able to get to know someone for what they are and who they are, and not just what they did or how they came into the doors of whatever agency you're at. There's so much more than just that one thing or maybe a few things. They are really more than that. And I think um, being comfortable having uncomfortable conversations because someone has to do it. And if it's the stranger from human services, I will take it as long as I can. Again, I just really enjoy working with youth and seeing how conversations can just open up doors for them.
you can definitely see your passion come
I do.
through, and you've vastly made it beyond the burnout rate of the 3, 4, 5 years, and you've yeah, just getting to know you over these last couple of years, and your commitment and your level of constantly learning, and just your ability to be able to engage and, like you said, have those conversations, and being the one willing to step up and make that change in these kids' lives speaks
Mhm.
volumes. And we could not be any happier for you to be a part of the dynamic team and for you to
Mhm.
be trained in. And the families and youth are very blessed and fortunate to be able to have you in their area and working for as long as you have and doing everything you
Yes.
do. So, so yes, I am so thankful for you to be on here, for taking your time to be able to speak to us about your area, your issues, what you've been doing for all these years,
Mhm.
how you've been better impacting the youth. You had mentioned as well, I was going to go through, you had mentioned that you have the online platform that helps you to be
Yes.
able to have those refreshers. So I always love when you go to our website, Dynamic Families, excuse me, sorry. When you go to our website, dynamicfamilysolutions.net, we always say not .com. .coms are getting old school, so always .net. but we have all of our curriculums, programs. You had been trained, you've been running a lot more of the social media sexting programs, but you've also been trained on the vaping, drugs, and alcohol, which maybe at some other point we'll have to be able to get you back on and we'll be able to talk more about some of that. But
I just did the truancy one too. That one's a brand new one. But we
and
just did that one last month, I think it was.
yeah, and did you get the online platform for that as well then? Or you're,
Yes.
I think, yes, okay.
Yeah, so I love the online platform, not only because it kind of walks through the activities, but you also put in, sometimes it's your narratives or your stories, but sometimes it's YouTube links. And so being able to like play those for youth too is, yep, right, yeah, is super nice. And yep,
Yeah, so you
use
have
them.
everything right here to be able to refresh kind of what we talked about. I love how the videos YouTube when you load them and it always gives you that, the thumbnail of
Yeah,
captures you.
but everything you can print off. So I will be honest, I've used my book so much, it's barely staying together, but I know I can always just come if I'm going out with a youth, week one, I go to this and I print it off. And
That's
then I'm
awesome.
able to, again, if they want to take it with them, I have that right away. If it's been a while and I'm like, oh, I don't really remember this activity, I just watch the video or I email if it's not working or I don't have something. And you've been great with super quick responses and
We
giving
tried.
me things.
I
Yes.
know how important it is to have the information when it comes to those
Yes.
groups. We always pride ourselves in having the most effective,
Mhm.
meaningful groups. And if you go into those groups unprepared, so we try to stay on top of it as to where, like, if you need anything or if you need a refresher, whatever it is, we're always here to be able to help in any way we can.
Yeah, I
But
think it's also really nice just that it's local, right? It's Wisconsin. It's not that, and you can get a lot of trainings from many other universities, and there's nothing wrong with those. But this is local. Everything is right here. Um, and so that's also, I think, just kind of another nice thing about it or perk.
that is huge. And being online, we've been able to spread, we're able to spread and go elsewhere and everywhere else. But yeah, having that Wisconsin tie and the Wisconsin connections, being originally born and raised or originally founded in Winnebago, and
Mhm.
then just kind of branching out from there. But yeah, you can certainly go to our website. You can look at any one of the trainings. We do have trainings in all the other programs uh, and activities. And once you're trained in, if you do the online platform, you have that access for life, and you get to be able to have the continued updates. You get to continue to have just those videos, resources, everything that we're trying to update as much as possible. That allows you just that constant refresher or something to be able to go through. And then we do have a ton of um, different options to become a facilitator or actually to become a part of the dynamic team, where you can be able to be trained through the Zoom trainings, the online self-paced trainings, and then we do also come in person. So we have a ton of options and we have a ton of variety of different, not just social media sexting, but with our life skills, truancy. And that's awesome that you just did the truancy one too. You said one of your, at the very beginning, you said truancy was what you're going to be working with and
Yeah.
rolling. So we'll have a few different areas to be able to talk through and bring you back to be able to hear how the truancy one starts going and see some of the messaging and changes that you have with that one. So
Yeah. Hope so.
yeah, well, this has been incredible. I can't thank you enough for being on here and for being able to speak to what you're doing. And yeah, we look forward to being able to just hopefully have others be able to hear this and take something from it, and just be encouraged to continue to be a part of that discussion and continue to be a part of trying to keep learning, as you said, and
Yeah.
continue to just keep opening that door and bringing kids in and inviting them in. And we
Yeah.
hope that you found, we hope that you all have been encouraged to be able to check into some new resources and some new tools and some new programming, and hope that we can be here to help serve and best benefit all of you in any way we can. So, Ashley, thank you so much.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Yeah, you continue to keep crushing it and continue to have an amazing rest of the day and keep making as much impact as you have been.
Thank you. You too.
You're very, very welcome. We'll talk to you